Hey everybody, this is Craig Garber. Welcome to Everyone Loves Guitar. And today is really one of those cool days when I get to interview not only one of my favorite guitar players from one of my favorite bands who writes all the music and he's a super talented guy. We're with Nick DiSalvo, who's a founding member and lead guitar player from the band Elder. If you don't know Elder, I really want to turn you on to them. Incredible band. I was telling Nick, this is no bullshit. They have every one of their songs is 5-star in my record. There's 2 songs on a live album that's only 4-star. But let me tell you, these guys are great. If you like psychedelic blues bands, really well-written songs, well-crafted hooks, nothing repeats itself. The songs are long. Nick's a super talented guy. Then check out Elder. So if you listen to guitar, you play guitar, just check out Elder. Check out any of their records if you want a place to start. Maybe start on Dead Root Starring, or the last album, Gold and Silver Sessions, are great. But we'll get all into this. And Nick broke down his background chronologically, so I'm going to ask him some questions or read some of his background and then ask him some questions. But first, Nick, thanks so much for coming on the show. I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, hey, thanks for having me. Thanks for that super kind intro.
It's true, man. It's easy to speak the truth, dude. I was really happy that I was able to get it's. Look, I have tons of people on the show, but when I've already connected musically with somebody, I've listened to, especially Elder. I mean, some of these songs I've listened to 25, 30 times. That's a 15-minute song. That means I've spent a lot of time with your music, man.
That's cool. Yeah, I mean, having to play those songs live that many times, with another digit added on the end, that can get that's a trial right there. So
well, it's great. I remember literally the first time I heard Dead Root Starring, I went out for a walk and I had just downloaded it. This is back before they had Apple. I bought the record, downloaded it on probably, I don't know, Bandcamp maybe. And I listened to it and I remember where I was because it was so impactful. I was like, holy shit. I was walking around the corner from near where I used to live. And I was like, oh my God, this is like, you have music that most of us have music in our heads from when we're kids. And that's the music that, connects deepest with us, certain versions of that. Right. And I was like, oh my God, I'm in heaven. And I just like the rest of that walk just blasted the whole album. So really weird how music impacts.
That's awesome. No, that's, I mean, hey, if a music can, bind itself to a memory or to a smell or to some specific moment in time, it's a sign that it's impactful. So that's always cool to hear.
Yeah, man, and you've done a great job at it. Quick message or announcement. Don't forget, you could watch these on YouTube now in addition to listening to the show on wherever you listen to your podcast. All right, so Nick DiSalvo, born in Michigan in 1989, which means I have genes that are older than Nick. Moved to Portland, Oregon in 91, Seattle in 95, and then New Bedford, Massachusetts in 2000 across the country. Question, you moved around quite a bit. Was that like a positive or negative experience for you? And did it have any impact on you as an adult in how you look at things or decisions you might make? Because that's a lot.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, definitely. It was, I think kind of ironically, as a kid, I always had a lot of fun moving. And we did it so much that at a certain point, it just felt natural. We've been here for a couple of years. Oh, we're going to move whereas it was because my dad, he was working in the rapidly developing tech industry, and his job was just taking him, I guess, wherever there was work for him. And, when we moved to a new school, I think kids would always ask, what's it like moving? Isn't that hard? And for me, it was always kind of like, nah, isn't this what doesn't everyone move? It was only until I landed in New England where there's this really deep-rooted culture of, maybe not just New England, but especially New England, people do not move around a lot. That's where they're from, and they're proud of being from there. And, they want to trace back to how many generations they've been there.
Right.
And for us, we were the new kids on the block, kind of like, you're from where? The West Coast?
Well, that's unusual, man. I grew up in New York. You never meet people from the West Coast moving there, ever. So I could see people being like, you're from Where? Yeah, I can just see.
Yeah, maybe back in the day. Now I probably New York looks a lot different, right?
Yes, very much so. Very much so. But back then, yeah, nobody would move, from, especially I grew up in the Bronx. It was not like no one's moving there anyway.
Yeah, totally.
You're
Yeah.
escaping from there. You're not moving into there. But even the city in general was not, if you met somebody from Oregon or Seattle, it'd be like, wow, it was almost like from another planet. Like, for me anyway, I'd be like, hey man, tell me what that's like. Cause I always like meeting people from other places and other countries too. Cause I think,
Yeah.
you could learn something different from someone that was raised in someplace different,
Oh, totally. I mean, it made an impact on me from such a young age that I learned just because, you've got a home or just because you're spending a lot of time somewhere, it doesn't mean that you're not free to roam. And I think it instilled a sense of, wanting to explore in me that I definitely carried, through the rest of my life so far.
Yeah. And we'll talk about that. That's very cool. At 13, you started playing drums. Who got you into that?
I think my older brother, he's only a year and a half older than me, but he's always been, as a child, he was sort of my idol and, the guy I looked up to. And he got into punk rock. He was probably 15 years old, I guess, at that point. And he picked up the bass guitar. And so I was just kind of looking at him saying, well, oh, he's doing this like music. This is pretty cool. He's one of the guys who got me into, rock and roll in the first place. And I think the drums is just what appealed to me at that point. I said, I want to be a drummer. So the only way I could get into that was, going to the school band and, hitting the snare drum or something like that. But it wasn't until years later I was able to get a shitty old drum kit for Christmas, I think, one year that I could really start playing as a, rock musician or playing punk drums or something.
Yeah, that's cool, man. I've spoken to a lot. I heard an interview actually many years ago with Warren Haynes from Government Mule, and he said the best thing a guitar player could do is learn how to play drums. And I've interviewed a lot of players that started on drums, and some of them still play drums, like Jim Oblon plays drums with Paul Simon, and he plays guitar. But they really have enjoyed that. Have you felt the same thing, like it added another dimension to your playing?
Oh, I mean, absolutely. I would say just having a developed sense of rhythm in general helps any sort of instrument that you're playing, and vice versa. Understanding how to play a guitar or a stringed instrument will inform you as a drummer. And I think you can just lock things in tighter, or at least I realize, especially, now that I play the bass as well, writing drum parts and writing bass parts, they all fit together because you understand how the instruments intrinsically interact.
Gotcha. I didn't realize you play bass as well.
I mean, play bass. I play it like a guitar. I play it with a pick. I'm not like a fantastic bassist, but
I get it.
For guitar players, a lot of times the bass is, a dumbed down guitar to some extent. So
don't say that to a bass player.
Of course not. I'm married to a bass player. I understand you're not supposed to.
There you go. Then you got a 4-track. You got your first guitar at 15. Started playing in various local bands and founded Elder around 2007. Your early gigs were New Bedford and Providence, Rhode Island, and you recorded the first record in your parents' basement when you were 18. First of all, congratulations. I think that took a lot of initiative and ambition. And I was curious what made you do, like what was behind that drive? And also, who did you also master it and engineer it?
I mean, I would say there's nothing behind the drive other than, we grew up in a pretty small community and there wasn't a whole lot to do. And I wasn't like an athletic dude. My friends and I just got into music, and that was kind of all that we did. And we got into, collecting records and CDs and just really worshiping the bands that we listened to. And the most fun thing for us to do was also, imagine what it would be like to record our own music, or, imagine what if you had a CD or even better, a record in the store one day. So me and my friends were making really horrible music on this 4-track recorder for ages until I finally got a computer and, started buying some microphones and stuff. And around the time, I was always just recording whatever musical project I was in. I think at one time I was playing in something like 6 or 7 bands, mostly just, 1 or 2 person operations that I was calling by different names. there was something really fun to me about recording as much as possible and just experimenting that way. And by the time we had Elder, that was kind of a serious band. And so we had the one guy in the local music scene who had some recording know-how. I think we bought him like a pizza or something, had him come for a couple of days and bring his microphones. And he just recorded this thing on my old desktop computer. And I think he mixed it, to whatever extent it was mixed. And we sent it to someone when a label finally approached us about putting it out to master it, because we had no idea what any of that shit was.
Sure.
Okay, mixing, that might have made sense, but mastering, I don't know.
Wow, that's really cool. That's funny trivia question. What did our first record cost? $9.95. Whatever the pizza.
Yeah, totally.
Then you moved to Hanover, Germany. Where's Hanover, by the way?
Hanover is basically in north central Germany. Pretty much, if you just like drop a pin right in the center of the country and move it up, a little bit, that's where Hanover is.
Okay. So you moved there as an exchange student for a year of school. What made you pick that, Hanover?
Again, kind of going back to the moving around thing. In high school, I got really interested in just travel, just felt really constricted by having grown up in such a small town. And our high school had some like foreign exchange club that I got involved with. Back in school, you have the foreign exchange kids from wherever might be just wandering around the hallways, and I always found that really fascinating.
Yeah,
to meet someone from so far away. And so I got involved with this, and I really wanted to go be a foreign exchange student myself, just kind of get out. But I could never convince my parents that was worthy of money, because those things do cost money.
Yeah.
And eventually I was a senior in high school. I found out about some scholarship funded exchange program. It was like a government grant, but it only was sponsored by the German Bundestag and American Congress. So it was just Germany. And I had no idea what Germany was like. I had no idea what any other country was like, but I just applied for it because I was thinking, well, fuck it. I'm going to be graduating from high school. I sure as hell don't know what I want to do. If I can get a free ride to just go to Germany for a year and, explore, then great. And I got it. And that's how I ended up there. It was just kind of a shot in the dark.
Did you learn German in that 1 year?
Yeah, I did.
Oh, wow. That's hard. That's not like Spanish or any Latin language. It's close.
Yeah. Well, I mean, for me, ironically, for me in retrospect, I think like the Romance languages are harder for me, but yeah, I ended up living in a pretty small community, a village outside of, or a small town outside of Hanover, which is a pretty big city. And it was just kind of, sink or swim. Either you learn German or you don't communicate with anyone for a whole year. So,
because they didn't speak English there.
No, I mean, maybe you could find someone, but back, what was that? That was only 12, 13 years ago, something like that. In small towns in Germany, not everyone's really speaking English.
As I understand it now, in the bigger cities, people do speak English there?
Definitely, yeah. I think it's more of like dependent on what side of the wall you grew up on.
East or west.
Yeah, for sure. East Germany, they weren't teaching English in classes as much as they were teaching Russian. So
yeah, I would imagine.
The older generation in the eastern parts of the country, they probably won't speak English, but the younger one, of course, does. Yeah.
It's funny, man. I'm getting connected with. Do you know Zodiac? They're a band over in Germany. They're headquartered out of Germany. Similar genre, similar style music, and I'm meeting with their same. This is really weird. Nick Van Delft. The guy's name is Nick. He writes, sings, and plays lead guitar.
Oh, that's my thing.
Yeah, I can't in the same country. Could you imagine? Yeah, man. But I was just curious if you knew them. That's really.
No, I don't actually.
I don't know where in Germany he is. And I could always hook you guys up if that makes sense. Okay, so you did that. How was that experience, by the way?
I say with no exaggeration, it was completely life-changing.
Tell me how.
I think just to have the experience given I was 18, I had actually finished high school, so there was no one, forcing me to go to class every day and do homework. Just that the possibility of exploring a completely foreign place, leaving everything and everyone behind, and just kind of having to forge your own path meet new people. I think it helps you develop an understanding of your own self or your own identity. Somehow I came out with more self-confidence to do new things. And not to mention something as daunting as, learning a new language. You can do that at any time, at any age. It just, it made me not afraid to take the steps that I've taken in the rest of my life, whether it be pursuing music or, moving back to Germany or just traveling or anything. I think it just huge self-confidence boost, and the understanding that, you come out just feeling that yourself a little better.
Man, that is a very honest answer. Thank you. And I think I think a lot of times people don't realize that I think people sometimes think, well, I don't have the confidence to do this, but they don't realize that you get confidence by doing it. Nobody, just with rare exception, nobody's like, oh, I'm fucking confident, man, I could do anything. That generally doesn't happen. But doing something that is intimidating, then you get the confidence, and then you're like, okay, now I can handle the next thing, anything, whatever it is. I give you credit. That's a really very cool thing that you got to experience.
Oh, absolutely. I feel very lucky.
So back then there was no Skype, Zoom, nothing. How often did you, and I'm sure calling up the phone to speak to your folks, that would have been $25. How often did you get to talk to them?
Oh, I think I talked to my parents maybe once a month or something.
Yeah.
Which was, that was funny back then. I think there was some hack, my host father knew some number you could call to route you through somewhere where it would only cost, a couple cents a minute, not like $1 a minute.
Oh, that's cool.
But I was 18. I was happy to be outside of my own parents' household, if only to be in another parent's household. But I learned, growing up as a teen in Germany, it's nothing like being a teen in the States. Just the level of freedom you have is so much more. I don't know what it was like in the Bronx, but I grew up in a pretty small suburban town in Massachusetts for the most part. So I wasn't really, missing that contact too much.
Yeah, I get it. My wife was actually from England, and she's always told me how growing up in Europe, the kids tend to be much more mature because they have more independence. The parents, at least back when she was younger, they weren't like helicopter parents like they are crazy in the States here today, like managing every fucking move these kids make. And so I am aware of that it's different. And I've met, even as a young person myself, I remember meeting people that were from other countries, and one of the things I always admired about them was they always seemed much older for the reasons you're talking about.
Yeah. No, I think I had the same impression too, and it makes sense on the back end once you spend some time over there too. You see kids. I don't think it's any fault of Americans per se, but just even everyday things relating to infrastructure. Again, maybe not so much like in New York City, where a kid might have to ride the subway by himself, but in a place like Germany, the kid, kid's taking the regular city bus to school, and he's, is riding his bike around town, and 16-year-olds are buying beer and getting shit-faced in the streets. It's just what kids do, and that's fine. And no one's rioting, and no one's burning down the city blocks or anything either. So, well,
that's what I don't understand why, and it's another conversation really, but that's what I don't understand. How is that able to happen? But they don't get out of control or burn down the block or whatever. And I think it's expectations that are set at baseline as a, from individually and as a community. I see that with my friends here that live in the States that are from other places. Their kids just have different sets of expectations as well. So
yeah, man, I don't know. I don't have any good answer for that one either, but it's definitely something you can observe.
Yeah, very, very noticeable. It's funny. I remember when we went to England many years ago, my older son, who's, like I said, he's a year younger than you. I think he was at the time like 16, and we went into a liquor store just to check it out. And they said, "Oh, do you want to taste?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure." And then they asked my son, and I didn't say anything because he was, we're on vacation. He's 15, 16, whatever. He's feeling like $1 million. I didn't say anything. But then I asked my wife, I said, hey, they poured him a drink. They said they could drink at 16 here.
Yeah.
Which I thought it was it. I wasn't going to ruin his parade. You know, he felt like Superman that he's getting a drink served to him. So
I know, coming from the States, it feels wild, but yeah.
Yeah, it is
just
crazy.
Normal. Yeah.
Okay. So then after that, you came back to Boston to start college. What was that all about? What prompted you to start why was college the next thing you wanted to do?
I just, that was the expectation in my household.
Yeah.
Both my parents went to college. They're pretty educated people. And it was, at this age, I wasn't thinking I'm going to, just pursue music. This is going to be my life. So I bought myself a year of time by going to Germany, and I started going to an art school in Boston, realized really quickly that was not for me. I moved back home, started just taking some courses at the local college, working on a farm, doing all sorts of random shit, just kind of trying to find myself and find my path. And I ended up, transferring another time to another college out in Western Mass, and finishing a course of study in German and Scandinavian studies, which was kind of just something I could coast through because I already
because you knew the material.
Language. Yeah, college was not like, I didn't come out of college feeling like, great, academia has shown me the light. I know exactly what, it was something I kind of had to do. It was good. I learned a little bit, but I came out on the other end, and went basically directly into working in restaurants and cafes and bars and this kind of shit. So
I think it's really cool what you did, though. I think everybody should do that. Take this, take that, figure out, find yourself. There's no rush. It's always, we have such big expectations in this country. You're 18 out of high school. Okay, now start your studying to be an accountant or start your legal. And it's like, fuck, man, you're 18 once. You should relax, have fun, and not take things too seriously at that point in time. You got a lifetime to do that. So you did that, which was good.
Yeah. There's a lot of pressure for everyone to figure things out immediately. And especially in the States, I know if you got the means, there's no taking a break. Everything's so competitive. You just got to get into the rat race as soon as you possibly can. And you have no chance to even figure out what it is that you want to do.
Yeah, I think that's a mistake.
Not that I was any closer to figuring out what I wanted to do, by the end of my college education. But
that's okay. Where's the freaking rule book here? I mean,
or let's say I knew exactly what I wanted to do the whole time. I just wanted to play music. We kept the band going. We're all, doing our separate things, but it's never a thought in the back of your mind when you're doing that. Let's just try music. Let's just see how that goes. Doesn't seem like a good idea if you want to end up with a roof over your head.
Well, let's talk about that. So after that, Elder reunited. And it's just 3 guys at this point.
Yep.
Okay, so Elder reunites. You guys write. Are you the primary writer?
Yeah, I've always been the primary songwriter.
Okay, so you rewrite. You get together. You write "Dead Root Stirring," which is a phenomenal record. That's the record I had downloaded, and I remember the first time I heard an incredible record. You record this in 2010, presumably not in your mom's basement.
No, we finally went to a proper recording studio.
And then, surprise, you moved back to Germany to finish school. So, and then you moved back to Boston with your bandmates to work in food service. So let me just ask you some questions there. After you recorded the record, did you guys say, hey, have any kind of tentative game plan? Okay, well, first of all, did you know it was going to be such a good record?
I don't remember what our, expectations were at this point. This is all very basic sort of, it's just 3 friends playing music for the love of that with no real higher ambition, just then to have a good time.
Right.
And I think we thought the songs were good. They're really coming along. We're starting to find our own voice as musicians and as a band, but there was I think we felt like we made a really cool record when we finished, but I didn't really think anyone would be talking about it, 10 years after it came out.
10 years later. Yeah, that must be a good feeling, I would imagine, right? You make a record 10 years ago, and I'm sitting here like a 17-year-old goo goo gagaing over it, man. That's got to be, not from an ego standpoint, but from a, a rewarding, like that you put something good out there standpoint.
No, totally. I mean, if something can even, be interesting to someone a couple years after it's released, they're already doing something good.
Yeah.
Not that, I mean, of course we weren't, inventing the wheel new or anything at that point.
Sure.
Stoner rock and psychedelic rock, these were all like very well traveled roads, but still the genre hadn't blown up to the point it's at now too. Yeah. So it was a lucky time to record a record that sounded like that, because I think we were already kind of starting to do things that other bands around weren't really doing.
Yeah.
It was the foot in the door, so to speak.
Yeah, and you guys would definitely have your own sound, your own vibe. The music is definitely stoner psychedelic rock, but it's a little more. It's a little more. I don't want to use the word prog, but because it's not prog at all. But I don't know, man.
I mean, it's not prog rock from like like 70s. So like, yes, Gentle Giant standpoint, but there's maybe the song structures have a progressive element to it. Right?
Yes.
They're non-conventional. And,
yeah, I would say so. Yeah. And it's just really well done. Did you guys tour to support that record back then, or?
No, we weren't doing anything like touring at that point. We're in college or working. I think we were all in college at that point and just didn't have time. And we could play local shows, but we weren't a known band. We had these records were put out on a very small label, and like I said, it took a long time for the snowball to get rolling and pick up enough energy to actually attract anyone where there's a point to going on tour.
Sure.
And even that didn't happen until I think 2012. We finally booked our first tour that was longer than just like a week.
Okay. How did you book? You booked it yourself, or was it someone?
Yeah, we were just, doing things the old ear to the ground way, writing other bands from other towns and seeing if they wanted to, trade shows or hook us up with whoever the local promoter was. Just kind of
cool.
Writing emails and really hoping that someone would have an interest in putting on a show for you.
Yeah, that's great, man.
Yeah, I mean, we had fun. Definitely played a ton of horrible shows over the years. But that makes you appreciate, self-recording and self-producing and self-promoting and self-booking, all these things. Like over the years, there's a real sense of payoff when finally people care.
Yeah. Huge, man. Okay. 2013, you did your first tour in Europe, including Roadburn, which is a huge festival. And it says your life changes with the revelation of how good touring here can be. How'd you get on the Roadburn show? Because you hadn't toured very much at that point. And what do you mean? What did you mean about how good touring? I wrote touring could be in Europe.
Yeah. I mean, at that point we had only done, like I said, some very self-booked sort of DIY style tours in the States. And I'd been writing, I think, for a couple of years to the head of Roadburn, really nice dude named Walter, who's been putting this festival on for a long time. And he finally, I think one year he replied and said, "Oh yeah, I know the band, like cool stuff, like let's talk in the future." And then the next year he finally said, "Oh yeah, like I want to invite you and I'll put you in touch with a booking agent because you should probably try to do a tour if you want to come over here." And
wow. Yeah.
So the agent, he also picked us up. He booked a tour for us for the first time, again, but we went over there and, we were used to playing like, maybe 50, 100 people or something in the States in these self-booked shows. And then all of a sudden we're playing, in Paris, proper venues, or in Munich, we're playing to like, let's say 100 people, maybe 150 people, and they know the fucking music. And
wow,
we're getting, the promoter or the booking agent asked us, what's your rider? And I'm like, what do you mean? Who's our driver? He has to explain to me what a rider is, because I don't even know that you can ask, like we had no fucking idea.
Yeah.
And maybe that was ignorance, or maybe because I never read into like the rock star, legends about like who had, what kind of M&Ms on the rider. But like,
you were like, as long as there's a toilet bowl with toilet paper in it, we're happy at that point.
Yeah. And that's still important, but
I hear you.
And so there's that, just being treated a little bit differently. All of a sudden you weren't, this nuisance that the bar staff at a venue or at some dive bar had to put up with for the night to get your $50 in gas money.
Yeah.
you were actually, being treated well by people who cared, getting food, getting a place to sleep every night. That just blew my mind.
Wow. That was included in everything.
That's pretty much, standard here. No books a show unless the band's got a place to sleep.
That is amazing.
And that's not to say, I should always clarify that, now we're at a point where, like, when we tour the States, we have amazing shows, we have great audience, we work with great promoters. And that's part of that is just having an agent who knows who to work with. But still, you don't get food at a venue. You don't get a place to sleep in the States. Definitely. It's just a different musical culture and a different level of approaching an artist.
That's interesting. And, I've interviewed so many guys that play over in Europe. Like I had Joe Hoare from Orange Goblin. I don't know if you know those guys.
Yeah, really well.
Yeah. So Joe was on last week and we were talking, and like the shit they had to go through to come here for 4 dates in 4 big cities. And like the drummer didn't even get his freaking visa.
I know. Yeah, the visa thing is like another, that's another fucking whole.
Now, do you get to skip that if you come back here because you're from here? How does that, like, is that like,
I'm an American citizen, as far as I'm concerned. The American government doesn't even know I'm living over here. There's another thing I've done with my life that I just kind of moved over here and never looked at what paperwork you're supposed to fill out. But
I'd be the same. Yeah.
As long as you're a citizen, you don't have to deal with it. So luckily, Americans coming into Europe also don't get fucked with crazy visas or something like that. Another reason touring over here is, more attractive than the other way around.
Yeah, I know. In fact, when again, my wife, she's British, but when she many years ago, she let her UK citizenship lapse because she's like, my family's here, my kids are here, I'm not moving back. But what happens is when she goes in, she's got to wait like 2 hours sometimes on the line. And so now she had to get her citizenship back because her mom's like very old, and God forbid something happens, she doesn't want to be stuck there, something's happening to her mom. And so she but it was like a 6-8 month process. And she had to send him a history of like photos of, she was born there. She had her birth certificate. She had to send a history of photos of, how she changed the looks. It was just really,
it sounds like they're as hard as the States, man.
Yeah. I was shocked. It was really, militant,
Yeah.
Okay. So Roadburn, and I'm assuming that tour went great.
Yeah. In retrospect, like, we just had the time of our lives. It wasn't like we played to the biggest audiences we've ever played to, but for us, it felt like the biggest step that we had ever made. And for sure, it introduced us into a whole nother level of, professionalism.
And the other 2 guys, where were they living at the time? Were they in the States?
Yeah, everyone was living in Boston at that time. Actually, we had a house together, or we lived on the top floor of a house with, I think 6 other roommates or something like that. And
nice.
Had the practice space down the street, and that was a kind of funny time. I think, me and the bassist were even working together. It was very communal, to say the least. Yeah.
Dude, it's so funny. When I interviewed Joe from Orange Goblin, all 5 of them lived together. Excuse me, the 4 of them, was it 4 or 5 of them? 4 of them, I think, lived together, and they worked together in the same place.
Yeah. That's funny. That makes sense. We wanted to live together. We got the practice space, a 5-minute bike ride down the road. And It's like, one of us got a job. Hey, you need a job? I can maybe get you an interview at this place. And it's just kind of...
That's cool. That's the stuff you do when you're young in a band, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, then 2013, you get awarded a Fulbright Award to teach at a high school in Recklinghausen, Germany, and you leave for another year, and you're writing the next album the whole time. What's a Fulbright Award? What does that mean, and how'd you get that?
Fulbrights are like, it's a category of a couple different kinds of government grants. I think they're funded by like the State Department or some sort of, ministry for culture and educational outreach. And they're basically just, there's research grants, there's teaching grants, which is what I got. Basically, if you can pitch a project to this organization and get it accepted, then they'll give you the money to go travel and realize your project for a year.
Oh, that's cool.
And the teaching grants,
pitch,
there's a lot. What's that?
What was your pitch?
Oh, I think for the teaching grants, that's why I went for that, because it was way easier. You didn't have to pitch a research project or something like that. Although I think I did say I wanted to research the origins of krautrock while I was over here, but
the government gave you a grant for that. God bless them.
Yeah, no, I don't think in the end I even got extra funding for that or anything. But the teaching stuff, I think it's probably intended for like, you want to go to Africa and like help teach English or some shit like that. And I got one for Germany because, again, I was just kind of, we had been doing some stuff with the band, but no one was making any money. And still kind of, I was working at like a deli or some shit. And just, I wasn't really enjoying my life living in a, top floor of a house with no heating in winter. Just, So I just figured I'm going to get the fuck out of Dodge for a little while and see. I was always thinking too, like, I've got, maybe I can become a teacher. Maybe this is something that's going to be, a future path for me. And I applied for this grant and ended up getting it. And I took off there for a year, and I was working as a teaching assistant at this high school, again, in this village outside of Recklinghausen. And
that was near where you were before? Was that near?
No, that's, not super far away. That's in like a little further towards the west.
Okay.
I was living in a city called Essen.
Oh yeah.
And pretty post-industrial area, very big metropolitan area. There's some shit going on, like an hour away from the border with Netherlands and Belgium. Good place to travel, but I hated teaching. I really hated it almost immediately to the end of the year.
Really? What did you hate about it? It's
just like, I couldn't get like sitting in a teacher's room. I couldn't get on with any of the teachers. I just felt more like I'm chasing away some kids for smoking pot in front of the school. And I'm feeling like I would rather be smoking pot with them than like, I just didn't feel like it was my world at all.
Calling.
I didn't feel like I had any sort of voice of authority, nor that I want to be a voice of authority. As another one of these, just the struggle I had for most of my like growing up, just I want to play music, but no, like I should, think about a real job. I should think about a real future. And so I kept, doing these forays into that, college and this teaching grant. And I just ended up, I would put in my hours, and then I'd go home and I'd pick up my guitar and I'd keep writing music. And that was just what I wanted to do. But it was a funny time. We even managed to put together another European tour while I was over there.
Well, that's cool. And
so we kept shit going somehow.
Were your folks supportive of your music career?
I would, yeah. I don't come from a musical family, and but my 4-track recorder and my drum kit, they came from my parents. They encouraged it, when it was clear that was what I wanted to do. There were plenty of points where I felt like I wasn't encouraged, or I was, told, that's nice that you do that, but think about the real world. So
yeah, okay.
My parents were wonderful people, but they come from the Midwest. They were the first in their families to go to college and get out of the small town that they were from and do anything. That sounds mean, but they were the first ones to make something more out of themselves. And I think they just wanted the same sort of thing for their kids.
Sure. I've noticed like other parents, as we were raising our kids, that that's pretty common, where either if the parents did not go to school and they wish they could have, they really academic, or if they did, they were the first generation. I was kind of weird. I'm like the first guy to go to school, but I always felt like, especially now, man, don't go to school. Like, go online, learn something for free for the most part, like there's almost anything, or buy some self-study course, or buy 3 or 4 of them over a 2-year period in different things, and then go work at it, and then go run your own business or something,
Sure.
It's just like, with rare exceptions, school is a waste of money. I hate to say it.
For me, it was definitely a waste of money. Yeah. I get that. On the other side of the fence, it's like, your chance of making it playing rock and roll music is about as good as it is probably becoming a player in the NBA. So I get that you might want to say, think about a plan B. But on the other hand, I think unless you're fully pursuing whatever it is you really believe in, you're never even going to have a fighting chance. So you might as well just fucking go for it and explore alternate channels. Yeah. Don't go to school. Maybe travel, see where that leads you. Pick up try working with your hands. I don't know. We need to stop demonizing, blue collar work and I don't know. I've got a lot of problems with the sort of academic system, especially in the States.
Oh, it's awful, man. I don't understand why my younger son went back to college. He wants to be a physical therapist. Like, that's one of those things you've got to go to college for, right? So he's physical, and that's his, he was born with mild cerebral palsy. He went to physical therapy as a kid. He's got an inherent appreciation for it. He's got a really good ability to connect with others. So that's his dream. So I'm really happy he's fulfilling his dream. But even the shit he's got to take algebra 2. And I'm like, what the fuck are you ever going to do with that? I mean, seriously? And he's like, I hate this stuff. I'm like, man, I can't blame you. Like, you're never going to have to do the cosine of anything in any job you have unless you're a teacher, And I
spent half a fucking year on a marine biology course, I get the general education. Now I know something about manatees. Maybe that's going to help me one day. And you think about how expensive education is, even if you're going to a state institution.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, the whole thing's sick.
It is nutty, man. I don't get it, but whatever. So you get your Fulbright Award. You realize that you are not into teaching at all. And you basically come to, I'm assuming I'm making this assumption, correct me if I'm wrong. You basically realize I've got to go play music because that's what makes me really feel complete. And that's what I think. And that's what my heart desires. Is that?
Yeah. Bingo. Totally.
Okay. And congratulations for doing that, because that takes courage too, especially when your parents are encouraged. And I know your folks were good people, so I'm not saying anything about them, but I know, especially as a parent, the biggest thing I learned from my 3 kids is do not have expectations. Shame on me, because I have no right to have expectations. Actually, I expect them to be good people, but that's it, man. I have no right to expect that, because they're individuals just like me.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, hey, I was not, I think also when you hopefully when you're younger, I've always been the kind of kid to, if my parents wanted something, I wanted to do the exact opposite.
Of course. Yeah, man.
You don't really, at a certain point, you don't really care. Also, but I came back, I was in a relationship at that time where my partner was also very, very unsupportive of my musical, I don't want to call it a career, but my musical interest. Yeah. And there came a point where I just said, fuck all of you, basically.
Good.
I just have to do, I'm going to do what I need to do. And, I remember us meeting in our old house where we still had some friends living, don't remember what hour of the morning, just saying I had just come back from this grant recently. I went to see the guys, I had this new album at that time, Lore, mostly written kind of in the back pocket. Guys, I got this album. I think it's really a big step forward for the band. I don't know about you, but I'm ready to be just all in. I don't want to do anything else. I don't want to, work a job unless it's going to get me to the next tour. I don't know about you, but this is where I'm at. And everyone just said, yeah, absolutely. Same page. No one had shit going for them. We're all in the same boat, basically, college educated kids with no jobs to look forward to in a shitty economic situation, and we're all just dreaming of the same thing. So
that's really good.
Yeah, and we just kind of went from there. Started doing as many tours as we could, hooked up with a U.S. booking agent, and Lore was the first step that got us a little bit more on the roadmap of people outside just the stoner rock circle.
Great record, man. It's 5 songs and 4 of them are over 10 minutes. You got 10:40, 10:30. And then the 16-minute song, and the one that's not 10 is 9:28. So I mean, this is a great record, man. It's just
Thanks.
a really good record. Did you ditch that other relationship? I'm assuming.
Yeah. Ended up. No, I don't want to talk shit. She was cool in her own way, but
you can.
We would.
I'm just kidding.
I think it was something it came to one of these points, you have to choose me or this band. It was okay, obviously the fucking band. I'm not getting at that point I was like, I'm not getting married to anytime soon, you know, like I'm playing music with my brothers for life.
Yeah. Good for you, man.
Yeah.
And then, okay, so you moved back to the States, recorded Lore in September 2014. And anybody listening, it's Lore, L-O-R-E, in case I'm saying it like L-U-R-E. It's Lore, L-O-R-E. Great record. Absolutely incredible record. That first song, Compendium, kicks ass. And then you tour extensively throughout the U.S., Australia, and Europe in 2015, playing over 100 shows. You had it. Did the label turn you on to a booking agent or something, or how'd you get all those shows? It's a lot of books, a lot of shows.
Yeah, we were working with this European agent ever since our Roadburn tour.
Okay.
We had a friend whom we used to play with. He had a band from Vermont, I think, and this dude started working for a booking agency, and he was like, "Hey, you know, you're my friends. I want to take you under my roster." So he picked us up in the States and eventually went on to found his own booking agency, whom we're still with.
Oh, that's excellent.
Yeah, and we got an offer from Australia that I think he fielded, and we were just like, "Yeah, of course." You know, like I said, anything we could do, we wanted to do. Just get us on the road for as much as we could be on the road.
That 2015, that I would imagine you guys really gelled that year.
Yeah, I mean, it was the most that we had ever played together live.
Yeah.
And, I think we realized probably finally by then some of our boundaries just about like how to be on the road and how to play together. You know, something has been always like, oh, I can't drink more than, you know, X beers before I play, or else it's going to be really shitty. Or,
yeah,
you know, like, and we also learned a whole lot about just how to put together a tour. You might get a routing, but that doesn't mean that, you know, we did a 2-month tour in Europe where we didn't have a single schedule. We didn't have a single day sheet. We didn't know when we were supposed to be anywhere at any time. Basically, we were flying from the seat of our pants for an entire 2 months.
How's that possible?
Very stupidly.
I mean, like, oh, you kept booking shows as you went along?
No, like you get a book. In retrospect, very silly, but you know, like you're playing. Normally the way it goes, you get a routing from a booking agent, and depending on what your negotiation is, you might have some sort of an actual schedule too. But in our case, we just had like, oh, you've got these shows booked, period. And we were just kind of, at that point, still very inexperienced.
Yeah.
Or had, you know, self-driven ourselves so long that we just never thought about it. And then all of a sudden, doing a 2-month-long tour with our buddies in Moss Generator.
Oh, yeah, I know those guys.
Yeah, and
it's a good band. Yeah,
awesome. We get over there and we've got, you know, we rented this like big camper van that we're sleeping in, and we're going to be there for playing like, you know, 50 shows or something over 2 months. Just an insane amount of physical labor, and our driver is, you know, this guy from Czech Republic, and he's like, okay, like when do we need to be at the show? And we're like, I don't know. And he's like, okay, well, when do we need to leave the next day? And we're like, I don't know. And it just went like this for 2 months. And
because nobody gave you any schedule that said leave here at this time to get here at this time. It's this far away.
Exactly. And, you know, in this, we had never done things that way in the States. Like I said, you know, European landscape is a little more professional on most fronts. And in the States, it was always like, oh, okay, we got a show. We're not going to be on before 10. We show up there at like, you know, 7. We're going to do a quick like line check in the back, and then we're going to play when we play, you know. Over here, it's like, we must have you at the venue at 3 p.m. or like earlier. And, you know, you have to arrange your own fucking parking and like make sure that there's such a rigorous schedule. And that makes total sense. But at that point, we just weren't used to it. So we were just kind of driving our driver absolutely fucking crazy. We had a lot of fights and a lot of meltdowns. It was hilarious. But we grew a lot, and, you know, hopefully we got better as players too.
Well, I'm going to tell you, every record you've put out has gotten more and more. It definitely, you could hear the maturity of the band with each successive record, for sure, man, musically. I mean, again, Dead Root Starring early record, one of my favorites, but every album is definitely a maturing of the band, and the writing, just everything. there's certain bands that I'm not a big Deadhead, but one thing I always admired about the Dead, when you listen to them, man, it's like you can just tell those guys have played they could finish each other's sentences musically, And I've noticed that with each successive album, you guys get more and more together like that, and more unified. So whatever you're doing is working.
Yeah. Funny you mentioned the Dead thing. Our new guitarist is like a super, I guess he's not new anymore, but our second guitarist is like a crazy fucking Deadhead. Yeah, Deadhead? We rescued him out of a world of Fish and jam band.
Yeah, it's more like a lifestyle that I notice. It's like being into boats. It's like if you're into boats, you're a boat person. You're not just the clothes you wear, the food you eat,
it's the whole package. Yeah, it's not totally.
Yeah, it's not just like, oh, I like this band, or it's a whole thing, man. The T-shirts, how often you wash or don't wash, whatever kind of.
It's really weird. Yeah, I guess you got to be part of that cult to fully understand it. I sure don't.
I guess, man. Okay, 2016, you moved, surprise, you moved back to Berlin on a whim to follow your girlfriend. So was this a gal you had met when you were over? If it's any of my business. If it's not, you could say that's not. Is this a woman you had met while you were there?
Yeah, well, I met my now wife in 2015.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks. When we were on tour, we played a show in Milan, and she's from Genoa, just like 2 hours kind of southwest of there. And her band opened for us, and that was how we met. And
that's so cool, man.
Yeah, and I just kind of immediately fell for her, but nothing happened. We just kept seeing each other at festivals and shit when we play in Europe, and eventually something did end up happening. And she was Italian, I'm American, but we both, had lived in Germany and decided to move here together at that point, just because it seemed like the best thing that we could do.
That's really cool, man. I really admire your following your heart on things, because I think that people that do that have a much more fulfilling and a much happier life overall. So congratulations to you for doing that, even though it's not like an easy decision often, like, oh, let me move to Germany, or let me follow this woman. She's not like in Milwaukee. She's in like another continent, Good for you, man. And congratulations.
I mean, believe me, it didn't make the whole trajectory of my life has never made sense in the moment. And that was just another thing that I was kind of like, should I be doing this? Does this make sense? But again, at that point, we were touring. I was literally washing dishes in the basement of some, shitty Mexican restaurant. It didn't seem like I had, again.
How do you pass that?
Yeah.
How do you possibly leave that opportunity, Nick?
I'm thinking I'm in love with this woman, and I can get an apartment in this city with a great music scene and a lot going on for, the price of like half a room in Boston. Let's just surprise, surprise, it ended up being just a good solution. So
good for you, man. I would encourage anybody, like I always tell my kids now, man, if they say, I don't know what to do, I always say the first thing is, where do you feel most comfortable? Where it makes you happy, man? And I really believe that is what the secret to is not something I knew as a young man, but something I really feel strongly about now. The happiness is most important to you, man. Your life will be incrementally better in every way.
Yeah, I'd agree with you.
So you got a visa. You started working on the next album, another great record, Reflections of a Floating World. Sanctuary. What a great, great song that is, man. And you get a real job. You start working in Germany for Stickman Records. What is Stickman Records? What do you do for them?
Yeah, so Stickman's I guess you'd call it an indie label, in the sense that it's still pretty small and run by just two people, husband and wife, who've been doing it for now over 25 years.
Oh, that's awesome. Talk about a happiness project.
Yeah, absolutely. Really cool people. We met them when we were on tour one year in Europe. Right before Lore came, or I think we hadn't yet recorded Lore. And we knew the label because we'd already bought records from a bunch of their artists, and just, they were kind of mysterious, didn't know a lot about them, but really appreciated, the artist and their label. Met them. They ended up asking us if we wanted to join the label. We did so with Lore, and partnership worked great. Ended up becoming good friends with them. Just that sort of familial basis that we also have with our US label that's really important to us to maintain.
Good.
And when we moved over here, they were kind of serendipitously also looking for some sort of more permanent assistance, because luckily, somehow miraculously, a smaller record label can still do well in 2019, or I guess 2016 at that point. So
yeah,
they're like, hey, we need someone who's bilingual, and it'd be cool. You work in the music industry already.
That's a huge asset, man.
Yeah, it was kind of cool. Just it was another one of those fell into my lap sort of deals, and keep it all in the family. And so I started working for them, just kind of the capacity of like learning how a record label works slowly but surely, because that's a really complex business. And then kind of taking over some digital stuff because I'm working remotely for them. And we're just a 3-person team at this point. There's certain things I don't do, but there are certain things I do. It's just kind of, a daily task list of what's on the docket for today, what needs to be done, what could be something as banal as like filling out some sort of bureaucratic forms for radio airplay, royalties, or it could be like putting an album into production, or just even going to shows and scouting for new bands. So
that's cool, man. So you have a nice job.
That's a great job. Yeah. And they're cool with me going on tour whenever I need to, which
that is
the thing.
And they're in Germany
too. So
they're in Germany, Nick?
Yeah, they're based in Hamburg, which is just like 3 hours away from here.
That's great, man. Congratulations. That's really cool. Glad that you connected with that.
And there's my plug for anyone listening, not familiar with Stickman Records.
Yeah, man. Everybody check out.
Got a lot of really cool bands there. And if you're into Elder, hopefully that's the reason you're listening to this, then you'll probably find something you like.
What's their website?
It's stickman-records.com.
Okay. Oh, so everything's in English.
Everything's in English, yeah. It's also run by, the owners are pretty similar story to mine. Half German, half American woman, married to a German dude who both grew up in like Oakland, or lived in Oakland in some pretty crazy years. They've been all over the place too. So we all have we vibe together pretty well.
That's great, man. Well, best of luck with it. And everybody check out Stickman Records, stickman-records.com. 2017, Reflections is released, Reflections of a Floating World, and you guys added another guitarist to the band. What prompted that decision?
Just the songwriting was getting way too complex, and there were too many ideas that we wanted to express, not just on a studio record, but also live, that really weren't possible without another set of hands. And we finally started experimenting a little bit more with keyboard sounds, and that was something I really wanted to not just let fall by the wayside whenever we played the songs live. And we never got any complaints like, oh, on the record there's like, this guitar part's missing when you play it live, because you could double up as many tracks as you want when you're in a studio. But it kind of felt like on the new songs they were getting too complex to possibly be just performed by us three.
The guitar player also plays keyboards?
Yeah.
Okay. Where'd you find him?
He was one of my only lasting, probably my only real lasting friendship from college, a dude I met when he also grew up between New York and Jersey, and ended up studying at the UMass that I got my degree from finally, at Western Mass. And I think we had both transferred there kind of late, didn't know a lot of people. And I was working at like a local university, kind of like food co-op, and I was wearing an Electric Wizard t-shirt. He's just like, hey man, cool t-shirt. So we started playing music together. We started this project called Gold and Silver that we recorded an album that came out in also 2012 or 2013. And he's just like an insanely talented musician, really. Got a lot of crazy ideas. But like a hippie who needs someone to harness that energy framework. So we worked really well together.
That's cool.
Yeah, our band has always been about, you know, being with friends. And so we wanted another guitar player. It was clear we just have to find someone we were already good friends with, because otherwise you're going to kill each other on tour.
Yeah.
And that was how that happened.
And was that the origins of the last record, the Gold and Silver Sessions?
Yeah, because that was the first record that we had done with him actually doing a lot of studio work. He was just a guest musician on Reflections at that point. And the vibes of that record sounded really similar to what we had been doing with the Gold and Silver project at the time.
Very cool. And congratulations again on getting married, man. That's nice. Hope you guys have a lot of good years together.
Thanks.
I want to ask you some questions about the band. This is a general question. How do you, your songs are really long and they are pretty involved at times. But let me clarify this, people listening. When I say involved, there's not like shit tons of overproduction and there's not like 40 tracks of anything. But it's not like a 1-4-5 blues, and the songs are long and that's really difficult to, it's like the difference between writing a 50-page book and a 400-page book. How do you, like, when you originally conceive these things, are they in your head like that, or do they just get evolved as the band plays together? How does that all happen? Like, where you come up with something 10+ minutes long?
I honestly don't remember how we even got started doing these really long songs, because the way we write music now is so fundamentally different than the way it used to be, just us all jamming together in the practice space. Now, we don't get to or for many years, actually now our second guitarist is also living in Berlin. So we do have something like a practice routine, but for all the years that I was writing music on my own over here, I started working with computer programs, just recording my ideas and kind of almost writing by recording. And
like looping and playing it back.
Like that. Yeah. And as technology got more involved and more accessible to people without the money for like studio level equipment, I started getting together something like a home recording setup. So now, I'm able to pretty much fully compose songs just at home on some relatively rudimentary equipment with some pretty good software. And oftentimes it's, you have an idea, record it real quick, just save it, put it away for another day. And then maybe it's going to come back to you later on when you're stuck writing a song and think, oh, there was that idea, this might fit. So now it's kind of just like very much like a pen to paper sort of figuring out what elements of a song do you want to put together and what kind of structure do you want it to have. And a lot of cutting and pasting too. It's kind of an unromantic way of doing things, but that's kind of the way it's just evolved at this point.
Yeah. The songs are amazing. So whatever you're doing, I don't care if it's romantic or unromantic, don't stop, because it works, man. And your other three guys are still in the States.
Yeah, at this point, well, we got two in the States and one who's in Berlin.
One in Berlin. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. A couple of questions about some of my all-time favorite Elder songs. Start with, again, I've mentioned this several times, Dead Roots Stirring. That song, the entire record is great, and again, it's very impressive for your first real record. And when I mean real, I mean not recorded in your mom's basement. Thoughts about that record in general and that entire time period for Elder?
It was a simpler time. That was a really fun time. I don't know. That's kind of what I associate that record with. We just gotten back together. We had some more ideas. We were getting better as musicians. We had a dingy practice space in Boston, and, just getting together, get a 12-pack of beer, pick up some instruments and play music. It just felt like a very free, no expectations time in our band history. And we had a lot of fun recording the record too. We went out to Western Mass at that point to record with a friend who we knew from another band, Black Pyramid, who had a studio back at that point. And just kind of partied and made a record and had a blast doing it, nowadays I feel like when we go into the studio, we're writing music, it's a hyper focused, expectations, are there, even if you try to shake them off kind of thing. And back then, just
because you have a history already now.
Yeah. And people are actually listening. At that point, there was no one listening. It didn't really matter what you did.
Yeah. So you had no accountability.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I get that. Interesting. I totally get that. That's a great record. All your records are great. That's a great record, man. Again, to come out with your first quote real record, that is amazing. Sanctuary, off Reflections of a Floating World from 2017. Killer song, 11 minutes long. Is there like a backstory to that?
That was really the only song that was written completely together by the band for that record. I think that was written probably before I left for one of my excursions abroad. And I think that one really sounds a little bit more fluid and a little more organic than the rest of the record for that reason.
Great song, man. It's funny, you as the singer, it's always interesting when I talk to people with like almost 100% of the time, I could never imagine your voice sounding the way it does on records. Speaking
listening to my own voice on record sounds pretty fucking weird to me.
Oh, dude, I listened to this show and people will tell me, Craig, I was at NAMM and this guy comes over to me and he saw my badge. He goes, "Oh man, I love your show." And he goes, "Can you talk?" I'm like, "Oh fuck, man, I can't stand it." And I don't feel the same way about my voice. And apparently people say it's very soothing and calming. I'm like, okay, thank you. I appreciate that, but I don't want to hear it.
Yeah, I feel like there's something about the acoustics. Your brain is not wired to hear your voice after having heard it reverberating in your skull for your entire life. Yeah,
but your voice is great. I mean, it just doesn't sound. It's it's hard to listen to have this conversation and then equate it. Your voice is great. It's just always different when you're talking and versus hearing you. Like if I would see you perform, if I saw Elder perform, it would be weird. Not weird. It would be different when I heard you singing.
Yeah,
because this is the context I first connected you with in person. Release. You did this record called Spires Burn /Release. That's just a little EP you guys put out then, basically.
Yeah, that was like when we started working with Armageddon in the States. Okay. They had, like I said, some friends of ours who have this record shop. They've been doing that for also, many, many years. And they wanted to do like a record store day release from a local band. So they approached us and we did it. And that was kind of the beginning of our partnership. I just wanted, something quick. And we had never done an EP at that point. So we just kind of banged out these songs and yeah, that was how it happened.
Dude, you banged out these songs. There's 2 songs, 23 minutes. Most people would bang out 2 songs, 6 minutes. Release is actually my all-time favorite Elder song, man. There's so much cool stuff going on there, especially at the end. Just a great, as you do in most of your songs, the climaxes are, you're really good about building up very long, exciting climaxes, man, which is like, your storytelling with your music, and it's such a satisfying feeling as a listener when you hear the end of that story and it's like victory, in my mind. And that's what I'm thinking, like, this is awesome. Cool. Any memories or comments of making that song or that little EP?
Yeah. I mean, that was, that song actually is one of my favorites too. I feel like that's got a certain, vibe to it that only a few of our other songs have that I really appreciate. And I remember writing that song in particular, some of these riffs that were, teasing me for years that I couldn't really figure out how to put together or how to express properly. And also I think we did some stuff in that song that, some tempo changes, some time signature changes we hadn't really done before. And that would become kind of like a blueprint for future songs.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I was living in some attic space of an apartment with some friends out in a farmlands in Western Mass. I put up a drum kit up there and just kind of, I think the guys came over and we messed around with the stuff for a weekend before going into the studio. It was felt like another fun project, really. It was the first time we also ever had someone approach us and say, hey, we want you to record a record and you've got until this date to do it.
Oh, that's right.
So having a flame under your ass, it was a different experience. It was fun.
Your drummer really did a great job on. I mean, he keeps it in his beat. His timing is impeccable, but on that song in particular, he kept it really smooth, man. There's a lot of stuff going on there, like you said. And then off the last record, your most recent record, the Gold and Silver Sessions, I'm going to mess up. Pronounce the second song.
Im Morgengrauen.
Thank you. I knew I wasn't going to do that right. Tell me about that song, because in general, this record was a bit of a departure. You had almost like, for lack of a better word, jazz-like melodies at times. The keyboards were a little more prominent, but what prompted those things? And tell me about that song in particular. What does the title mean? And it's a great song.
Yeah. Well, the title means literally in the gray of the morning, or, at dawn is really what we'd say. And that was a title that I gave to the song after we had already finished recording it, because that was actually that was one song on that record that I recorded everything by myself, because it was originally going to be for some solo project thing that I had been, just building up ideas for over the years. And we got asked by this label, Blues Funeral Recordings, to take part in this subscription vinyl series. It was going to be like 7 or 8 bands, doing special release records on this label that were sent to subscribers of the label. And we were the first band who was going to do a record. And yeah, we wanted to do something that didn't sound like anything we had done before, and play around with some of the softer ideas that we had become increasingly interested in. After playing heavy and loud music for so long, we're just kind of, playing less heavy and softer music becomes more and more interesting, at least in terms of diversifying your sonic palette.
Yeah, sure.
And yeah, that was the song. Originally, it was going to be the first and the last song on that record, which are the longer of the two. And, we had some extra time in the studio. We were recording these songs, in between 2 legs of a European tour. And I was like, well, I've got this song. Like, let's try and do this too. Let's try and see if it fits. And I think it fit pretty well. And it ended up being probably the most interesting song on the record for me.
Yeah, great. It's funny, because when I first started the record, like I double checked. I was like, I thought maybe at like once in a real blue moon, you get a download that's not like it's got your band's name on, but it's, somebody else. And I was like, but as the song evolved, then I heard the band, but it was really different, and I like it. It was great. I mean, it was really good. What prompted you to give it a German title? And actually the last song, what is that called too?
Yeah, that one's called Weissensee, which is the name of the borough that we recorded this whole record in.
Oh, okay. So now you could do all this shit in German, and you could be like making fun of people, and nobody's going to know, or whatever you
except for the German speakers. Yeah.
Except for the German audience. Yeah. Which I'm sure is getting bigger and bigger since you live there. But
yeah, the whole thing's it was meant to be, sort of an explorative record. And it was very heavily improvised, at least the first and the third song, almost totally just live stuff with some overdubs. And it had a lot of like kind of krautrock vibes to it. And that was another reason that we decided to give it these German titles, just as kind of an homage to,
it does, man. Yeah.
It was recorded in Berlin, on a break in between some legs of tour. It just kind of, it fit the whole vibe of the project, sort of like a pit stop. Let's jam out some songs real quick. Oh, we did it in Germany. We give it some German names, and like, it's got it's a record that's kind of rooted in a time and place, or an experiment, kind of like an experience that it happened at this point on the road or whatever.
Well, I got to tell you that song At Dawn is one of my favorite Elder songs. Great track. Really good. I really liked it, man.
Oh.
Any low points or dark periods you've had to deal with throughout life, and how'd you get through them?
You sent me over these questions. I looked at that one and I had to think, I've had a pretty good life. I got to say, I'm very fortunate. I haven't had a lot of low points or dark periods in my life that weren't self-induced, or, just wondering. wondering what the hell. I've never had to grapple with like serious tragedy or hardship. Yeah, I'm
Good.
a very fortunate person. So
Good.
yeah, I mean, like I touched on earlier, I had maybe some hard times figuring out what I wanted to do, but that's hardly a hardship. That's just part of becoming a functioning adult.
Yeah. Good for you, man. I hope I interview you in 10 years and you get the same answer. That'd be great.
That would be nice. Be nice. Yeah.
Music, guitars. Let's talk about gear for a few minutes. What's your go-to guitar right now? And do you have any other guitars that you would consider like in your top 3?
Yeah, that's fun. I'm looking at your set, and I think you probably have more guitars than I do.
But you play them far better than I will ever play mine, so it's okay. I would swap with that in a second.
Yeah, I'm playing a Dunnable Yeti is my current kind of grab and play guitar. Dunnable. It's spelled Dunable. It's the maker is a dude named Sasha Dunnable who plays in the band Intronaut.
Okay.
You might know, kind of like a progressive metal or post metal band from LA.
Okay.
He built me this guitar with his, I think his only employee, another friend of ours, a dude named Aaron. Really nice custom guitars that they make, and this company's been really blowing up, and he did a really awesome job on a custom job for me.
What does that look like?
It's kind of like mine's got an all natural finish and almost kind of looks like a dining room table, and it's got a really big body. It's almost kind of like a Jaguar mixed with like some like 80s kind of sharper geometry in it. It's a pretty interesting body shape. It doesn't exactly look like any other guitars.
Do you have it close by any chance?
I can grab it from the other side of the room.
If it's cool, yeah, I'd love to see it.
Give me a sec.
Yeah, man. Do your thing. Thanks, Nick.
All right.
Thanks, man. Thank you. Oh, wow. Yeah, so it's like an offset SG kind of.
Something like that. Yeah, it's a pretty slim profile, although a little bit thicker than an SG. Just really smooth curves. They got their own headstock design too. Really comfortable, really fast playing guitar. The pickups were, I think, hand wound, if not by Sasha, then by a close friend. Just a really cool guitar by a really cool company who are just great people. And so I had them build me my first custom guitar.
That's really thick.
Finally took my SG61 reissue out of my hands for the first time since I bought it like 10 years ago.
That's what this is. It's built my SG. It's built on 61. So let me ask you this. Let's talk about that, because the neck on this, the 61 SG, is really slim. That looks like a fat neck.
I don't know what kind of. See, this is where my ignorance comes in. I don't know if this is like a D or C profile or whatever, but it's actually pretty slim. I would say maybe a little thicker than like a 61.
Okay.
Depending on the year, those are like super thin. But this thing is, I made it pretty clear, like, I'm not a dude with such dexterity that I want like a huge headstock. I've always played with thinner neck guitars, and he built me something that just feels really like they put an extra level of love and care into it. It's a really cool guitar.
Yeah, really nice. Look, I've never seen that. I'm going to check him out online.
Yeah. I think cool. If you love guitars, you'll want to check out this company. They're definitely one of the custom builders that's making a name for themselves in such a competitive field.
Do you have like a number 2 and a number 3, or is that it? You just play that all the time?
No, I mean, I got a 61 reissue too that I really love, and that's a really, one of the most comfortable guitars I've ever held. I've got an ES335 that unfortunately has only seen studio work. I've never really, I think, played maybe one show with it. I just bought another guitar, but it's in the States right now, so don't know if that's going to knock one of the others out of the top 3.
What is it? What did you get?
It's a Guild S300.
What does that look like?
Another one, like they called it it almost looks pretty similar to this Dunnable, actually. They were calling it the new Guild shape back in the 70s when it was released, because it was like a new shape. And it almost looks like, when Guild didn't know what the hell they were trying to compete with these brands like, Dean or BC Rich. It's a real like 80s kind of metal looking guitar, but it's aged well. To me, a lot of people think they're ugly as sin, but I think it's a really cool looking guitar. But I bought it online for like a steal, and I just had it, shipped to our bassist, and I haven't touched it yet because it's just been over there.
Oh, that's tough. That's tough when you have a guitar you want to play and it's not anywhere near you.
Yeah. Well, I'm living in like a super tiny apartment, and I'm such a fucking gear junkie. I'm buying, guitars and pedals and keyboards and all this shit all the time, and it's getting harder and harder.
Is there a lot of availability of stuff like that over in Germany?
You find different stuff over here. Like you'll find that certain brands are more available than they are in the States, and vice versa. Like Marshall shit, for whatever reason, even being a British company, you'll find it way easier in the States for better prices.
Wow, that's weird.
And like High Watts, you'll find a lot more readily over here. That's like another UK brand. And a lot of there's some interesting like German stuff, West German companies that were making like weird tape echoes and stuff that you'd never find in the States that you can find over here. Just depends on where the stuff came from. And, like the equivalent of Craigslist here, you find a lot of interesting stuff that you wouldn't on the Craigslist back home.
That's cool. Have you been able to like find some stuff there where it's like selling for a song and then like, okay, I could bring this back home and put it on Reverb and, 4 times my money or something?
I think, I'm not like I don't really look for stuff like that. I've definitely bought some like synthesizers that I think are way easier to come by over here for good prices. By and far, most of the guitar stuff is way cheaper in the States, and I've definitely brought some stuff over from there and sold it over here for
Gotcha,
twice the price or whatever. So if you're back and forth, you can definitely make the most of it.
Sure. What are some of your go-to effects? Because it doesn't sound like you use tons of effects, and you just said you're a gear junkie, so maybe I'm wrong. I
mean, I do rely mostly on the tone of a guitar and the amp, and that's kind of the cranked amp is just the sound of the guitar. But I use some fuzz pedals. I use increasingly delay all the time, which becomes like kind of a crutch. I've got a really cool Empress ecosystem. I don't know if you know this company, Canadian company making really, really interesting pedals.
No, I don't. Empress. Okay, I'll check them out.
Yeah. Black Arts Toneworks, they're a company from Ohio. Used their Faro fuzz for years and years, and just got a new pedal called the Coven, which is like a fuzz and a boost kind of smashed together, where you can stack them or you can play them alone. And they make like that's like the most killer fuzz tone I've ever found. I've been using that guy's stuff forever.
Yeah, that sounds cool. A boost.
Yeah. Stomp Underfoot, that's another really cool company. They sent me they do like exclusively, I don't want to call them clones, maybe rebuilds of old big muff models through the years, super specific, to the letter. And I've got like a 71 Ram's Head fuzz that he made that sounds really, really great. And just honestly, a volume pedal. That's like a good volume pedal is really the one pedal I probably couldn't live without, just because I'm always, diming an amp and then just using that to attenuate the gain stage of it. So
what are you playing through amp wise usually?
Over here, I've got a couple high watt custom 50 watts that I'm using.
You don't need more than 50 watts, I would imagine.
No, I've got a 100 watt of those, and I can never use it for anything really, unless you just want to play clean.
Yeah.
I've got a JMP from like 76. That's really cool. But again, 100 watts, way too fucking loud.
Yeah.
And the high watt 50s are perfect. Even those are really, really pushing it volume wise.
50 watts. Yeah. Those, man, I have a Dr. Z here. I got to sell it. It's a 38 watt. I can't use it. It's like,
yeah, even that would be fine for me, I thought about getting like a 20 watt amp, but like people don't understand, they think it needs to be fucking loud, and you'll look like a chump if you don't have a full stack on stage. It's like, why is it better?
Yeah. What's your favorite song that you wrote?
Probably either The Falling Veil or Thousand Hands from the last record. And those are both like, again, songs that for me have this kind of specific vibe that's it's not melancholy. It's somehow uplifting to me, or it's got this kind of upbeat feeling. And they're a little faster. I think they're just songs that are a lot of fun to play live. They got a lot of challenging licks that are just when you're playing something like Dead Root Stirring for the millionth time, it feels fucking boring.
Yeah. Is that the fan favorite as far as album and song?
I mean, it's, I noticed that it like shifts after a while. Like for a while that was, Dead Root Stirring or Gemini. For the people, a lot of people don't get past the first song on an album apparently, because it's always, they want to hear Gemini is the first track from Dead Root Stirring. They want to hear Compendium is the first track from War. Now it's Sanctuary is the first track.
Right.
It's kind of shifting, a new album comes out and then like the fan favorite moves back in album. So thankfully we're getting to cut out more and more of the old stuff that's just kind of insufferably boring for us. But
I get that. Do you have a favorite song to play, or is it the same as, like you just said, Falling Veil and Thousand Hands?
No, I think it's, pretty much the same.
I'm going to go back and listen to those now that I know they're your favorites. I have them. They're 5-star songs. I don't remember off the top of my head.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot more going on in the newer records, and it takes, I think, a lot more spins to kind of get into it and, remember, I understand this part, because the first time you listen to it, it's just kind of information overload, and that's a reason we don't play new stuff live before it's recorded, because we've done that before and you just see that people just don't, not that they don't get it, but there's nothing to grasp onto, because it's just, how does this part fit to this? Wait, was that a leitmotif? Is that coming back? It just.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, man. Because these aren't songs that you remember the vocals for the most part.
No, they're not. There's nothing, the vocal
This isn't a pop song.
Cool about. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, very, very interesting. Top 3 Desert Island discs, no particular order, and just for now.
Motorcycle, Little Lucid Moments. This is the
Okay,
band that I mentioned to you.
I got to check those out. Check those guys. Yeah. Motorcycle, and what album?
It's called Little Lucid Moments. This is one of the most formative records for me in my own, playing style.
So you were aware of them before you even hooked up with the label?
Yeah. I've always been kind of
check these guys out.
Yeah, music junkie, and especially since we got the internet in our house back in the day, I've always been looking for the next thing, and they kind of came to my attention around 2007, I think, with that record.
Little Lucid.
That's still the one for me.
What else?
I'm going to say Yes, Close to the Edge.
Okay.
That's another record for me that's just got so much going on and so many great moments, and crosses a lot of different musical territory that it's always fun to listen to again. I
saw them in concert here around, I don't know, probably 7 or 8 years ago, and Steve Howe was just he's so well organized. He's kind of like, I don't mean this in a negative way, like a nerd, and he's like very well organized. He's just a master, man, how he just puts everything together, and it doesn't ever play a wrong note. And it's just really, really,
I don't understand it. He's got to be a cyborg or some sort of reptile.
Yeah. He's just brilliant guy. Motorcycle. Yes. What would be number 3?
You're making me rethink. I'm on a desert island. Maybe I want some Jimmy Buffett. Are there margaritas on this island?
It's so funny. There's 2 kinds of people. Some people really answer that question. Well, if I'm on a desert island, I'm going to need this. Or other guys just like top 3 records. It's always funny to hear the response.
Yeah, I'm going to get sick of it. I don't know. Honestly, I might want some hip hop, just, if I'm going to listen to 2 rock records all the time, I might want some Tribe Called Quest, Midnight Marauders or something like that, or Gang Starr.
It's a good band.
Even Wu-Tang. I don't know. Something different, something along those lines.
That'd be a first. First time I've heard that. Wu-Tang mentioning. Dude, have you ever seen that video? It's the Wu-Tang financial planning.
No.
Just go look. Everybody listening, go Google Wu-Tang financial planning. It's like from an old, I don't know, it sounds like a Saturday Night Live skit. It's hilarious.
Was that a skit from an album or something?
No, it's just it's a commercial for Wu-Tang financial planning. I don't know. It had to be Saturday Night Live, something like that. It's just hilarious.
You guys are genius. Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me.
Fucking hilarious. Definition of happiness, Nick.
I would, let me be annoying here and say it's the absence of need or something like that.
That's very academic. Most exciting experience you've had, or best thing that's ever happened to you?
Yeah, I mean, that's hard to say. I feel like I've been way too lucky in all the exciting shit that I've done in my life. I feel, but you know, probably still for me, maybe our first European tour was one of the most exciting things I'd ever done.
That's great.
Or maybe the first time I set foot in Germany after having, my first intercontinental flight, or, first like long travel, being alone.
Yeah, that is cool.
But a lot of the band shit just kind of too much to count at this point. Too many highs and too many interesting things and too many, fun experiences.
Do you have any non-musical superpowers?
No. That feels bad to say, but yeah, I always think, if I couldn't play music, I don't know what the hell I would be doing with myself.
Well, you don't have to worry about that. Any hobbies or interests outside of music?
I try to read.
Yeah, you seem super well.
I try to ride a bike, but the truth of it is I work in music. I write music in every spare moment, and I listen to music in the moments that I'm not writing or working. So
yeah, it's hard.
It's kind of an all-consuming thing for me.
It's hard. When you could always tell someone who's well read by the way they. I thought you were very well read. You could tell by the way people speak usually that they're.
Yeah, well, I wish I was better. I wish I was more well read at this point. Kind of drops off after someone's forcing books into your face.
Yeah, it goes in cycles, though. I think you'll have periods where you might tear through 15 books over a 8-10 month period, and then you'll back off a little bit.
Totally.
I've only been playing guitar a few years, and when I started, I felt bad because the thing that got lopped off was my reading. And I was talking to my son one day. I said, "Nick, I feel really." My older one, his name is Nick as well. I said, "Nick, I feel really bad. I really don't read any books anymore." He goes, "Dad, you've read enough books." I'm like, "Okay." It's like I felt good that he said that. He was like, "Dad, you've read enough books for a lifetime." I'm like, "Okay."
Hey, man, if you're giving up reading to play guitar, stimulate that part of your brain, as long as you're not like, "Oh, I've been watching so much television, I forgot to read." Then
TV, man.
That's maybe a problem. But I mean, as far as I'm concerned, it's all gravy,
Yeah, no, I'm good with it. Actually, I've read a couple of books recently. I don't know why. Favorite place you've traveled, man? You've been all over the world.
Whew. That's a hard one. I don't think I got prepped with this one either.
It's not here. It's number 13.
Oh, well, I just didn't get that far.
No, you're good.
I don't know, one of my favorite places to travel, one of the most beautiful places I've ever been is still Genoa, which is where actually my wife is from. It's kind of a birthplace of Christopher Columbus. It's this really beautiful sort of tropical looking, big mountains with green vegetation meet rocky cliff sides right on a fantastic ocean. It's just kind of one of the most beautiful places you can imagine.
Very cool. I'm sure the fact that your wife is from there gives you a little more of a buzz as well as it should.
Oh yeah. I mean, I really didn't understand Italy at all or even like the place before I started dating an Italian.
That's cool, man. Hey, tell me about the toughest decision you've ever had to make or the most difficult thing you've ever had to do. And that'll be the last question.
Even though it seemed like a clear choice, I still think the most difficult thing for me to ever do was just to make the break about what do you want to do? Do you want to follow your heart? Do you want to follow your dreams? Or do you want to, let other people's expectations dictate what you should do? Just the kind of, making a decision to be true to yourself, making the decision to listen to yourself above all, and just trust that whatever you're going to do is going to be the right decision for you, be it for a lifetime or just for the moment.
I give you so much credit for that, man. I'm happy you made that decision, and because it sounds like you got a lot of peace, and it just sounds like you're like a lot of happier dude. So
I'm like I said, had a pretty lucky life. I feel very happy with everything that's happened to me in these 30 years. So I can get hit by a bus tomorrow, and hopefully I won't, but
no, hopefully you won't.
Wouldn't be a bad day to die.
Well, listen, first of all, thank you very much for your time. I want to turn everybody on to Elder. They're a great band, man. If you like blues, rock, psychedelic, long songs, well-written, really good music that'll make you feel great. And It's funny, make you feel great, but your music is very intense, and I mean that in a good way. It's like it strikes deep chords, man, you know, and that's what you do really well, especially, as I said, when you bring people up and down into the crescendos. And so everybody, please check out Elder. They're all over. You can find them on Apple, Spotify. Again, listen to any Elder record you want. Deadroot Stirring is great. My favorite songs is Release, which is on the Spires Burn, Release, repeat. M. Morgan Ground. That's a horrible English way of
saying. That was pretty good. That was pretty good.
Okay, cool. M. Morgan Ground on the Gold and Silver Sessions is a great record. Reflections, they're all great records, man. But just check out Elder and support them. They're not touring now. Next year, new record will be coming out. And again, doors open. Please come back on the show. I'd love to promote it. And will you guys think you'll be touring next year?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we're going to be recording this winter. If everything goes well and we come up with a record we're happy with, then by next summer, we're going to be doing tours, Europe, US, wherever else.
Awesome. You guys ever play Florida?
Not for years. Not since 2012.
That's a long time. It's tough to get down here, I know, especially for the independent bands. It's spread out. It's far. But if you do come down here.
Yeah, I don't, it's honestly, we've been looking at routings, and that's been another question, because it's a commitment to go all the way down there. But it was, we had some great shows, actually, even as, long ago as then.
Well, I'm in Tampa, Ybor. There's tons of good clubs here. You could play in Ybor City, man. So I will be watching for you. I'd love to see you play if you come down here.
Awesome.
And everybody, check out the band Elder, ELDER. You can find them on social media, and just go listen to their music. It's really good. Nick, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate everything. You're a very smart young guy. I hope to have you back again. I know you'll be back on the show again, and I want to hear that same answer that when I say low points, it's like, Craig, I really haven't had any. So I really hope that's what happens.
Thanks for the interview. Thanks for all your kind words and your interest in the band, and getting us spreading the gospel, You're
very welcome. It's my pleasure, man. Everybody, thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this interview, please share it on your social media channels. We appreciate your support. Please check out Nick DiSalvo and the band Elder, ELDER. Great band, and you're going to love them, especially if you're into guitars. Nick's a great guitar player. We didn't really talk about that much. He's a great guitar player and a great writer. Make sure you go to everyonelovesguitar.com, sign up to get on our newsletter list, put your email in there so you and I can connect. And most important, remember that happiness is a choice, so choose wisely. Be nice, go play your guitar, and have fun. Till next time, peace and love, everybody. I'm out. Nick, thank you for everything.